What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fitness Oracle. Today, we sit down with Stephanie Lueras, who specializes in beginner and adaptive fitness, aiding those of all sizes, ages, conditions, or illnesses, and ability for consistent and the ability to incorporate inconsistency with their and the ability to incorporate consistency with their personal movements and nutritional goals. This is a great conversation that I had with Stephanie a while back. We talk about her journey. She has a very interesting journey where she dropped 200 pounds. And we talk about how she went about it and how she got to where she is today. We talk about very interesting concept of body image. We also get into her very unique way of helping people get started, because one of the hardest things to do when you get into the fitness world, whether you've never set foot in a gym to you took a couple of years off, is actually getting started. She has a very unique way of doing it. It's a good way. I'm actually incorporating it myself right now. We also get into topics when it comes to movements, nutrition, mental health, and the big one that everyone is scurrying about, trying to get everything in order, is how she sets goals. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys in just a few minutes. Welcome to the Fitness Oracle, where we have real conversations with real people just like you, with real stories just like yours. And this is one of their stories. I am your host, John Katsabos. My guest today is Stephanie Lueras from Heart and Soul Fitness and Wellness. After coming to a point in her life where she was sick and tired of being sick and tired, she needed some changes. Through small actions and goal setting, Stephanie has lost over 200 pounds through balanced nutrition and movement without the use of restrictive dieting, commercial weight loss plans, or supplements. She has gained a love for endurance sports, running marathons, and is currently training for Ironman-distance races. She uses the same holistic goal-setting model in working with her clients in groups and individually to empower people to break down the everyday barriers that exist so that they can achieve what they are working towards for their best personal wellness. Stephanie specializes in beginner and adaptive fitness, aiding those of all sizes, age, conditions, or illnesses, and ability with consistency with their personal movement and nutritional goals. She enjoys incorporating body weight resistance training into workouts. So many workouts require no to minimal experience. She also is a TRX suspension system instructor, Silver Sneakers fitness instructor, and Silver Sneakers nutrition facilitator. In 2022, she is also competing in her Kundalini Yoga certification and orthopedic exercise specialist program. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
It's great to be with you today.
It's great for you to be on here. How is your training for the Ironman coming along?
Well, the pandemic has been an interesting process because I've got all of my 2020 races happening in 2022. So it's been an interesting process of taking my time and being patient, but training is paying off. So we'll see what happens this year.
That's awesome. I was in the pandemic had other reasons, other goals for me. Like I wasn't allowed to go into a pool, so I couldn't swim. But I have been doing some digging on your videos, and one of them actually something something really interesting that you said, and I want to talk more about this, is you on a recent video you made a comment, and this is true for a lot of people. It's I'll start when.
Yes.
I love what you said, and I want you to explain the, I guess, the mindset behind it, if you will.
You know, we have this great ability to put barriers in our way. And sometimes they're completely legitimate, and other times they're in our head. But we have this ability in our heads to use things like time, our schedule, our job, our children, our age, our fitness ability, our uh, our medical conditions, or our size, saying things like, I'm too far gone to be able to do something. And the reality is it's a load of crap. And I'm one of those people that thinks anything is possible. And it's not that Pollyanna thinking, like, the glass is half full kind of thing. It really is anything is possible. It's looking at something from a different perspective. Maybe you've tried A, B, and C and it didn't work, but let's try D, E, and F and come at it from a different way. And you might be surprised at how we can make something fit your lifestyle, fit your budget, fit your family values, and work for the long term. And instead of, if I'm not going to create this perfect world in which every circumstance is going to fall into place, then I can do the thing that I want to do.
I totally agree. And I catch myself with that as well. Like ever since moving to Florida, it's been a month now. And since the time of this recording, and I keep finding myself finding, oh, I'll start running when I'm finished getting my deliveries. The deliveries have finished. Oh, I'll start running when I start waking up earlier. And it's this like self-sabotaging thing that keeps happening to people. And this is something small for me, but I know with you, you've dealt with, and you're probably dealing with clients that are doing the same thing. Do you have any tools or tips or tricks that you help your clients with to help overcome these barriers?
Absolutely. One of the things that sometimes seems a little bit trite is, what is the one thing that you can do right now, today? And it can be as small as taking out your shoes and putting them by the door, pulling out a recipe that you intend on making for a meal, going through the refrigerator for 2 minutes and pulling out the lettuce that's turned brown because you bought it 3 weeks ago and haven't used it. It's the one thing that you can do right now that's moving you towards your intention. It might not be this great, huge action, but it's something that you're doing that you can do again tomorrow, and you can do it again tomorrow, and keep building on it and building on it, because it does have a ripple effect. You eventually are going to put on those shoes. You eventually are going to then, once you've put on those shoes, going to walk out the door and do something with it. There's something very powerful in those small actions.
I love it. Like those small victories.
Mhm.
It's like you said, small victories have a giant and massive effect in a long term. I know recently from your videos, you said that you had an allergic reaction to something. How are you feeling?
I'm doing all right. I try to remember which one that is. We I have a lot of environmental allergies, and so it could have been anything, but I also have a food allergy. And sometimes it gets disguised because it's not always listed on menus. And you roll with it. And some days you can feel really great and wake up the next morning and feel like death. So it's one of those things that self-care and listening to your body is so important. And it's not something that I've always done in my life. I've I've always been that person that has powered through. And that's not the healthiest attitude to take. And even like this week, I had an experience where I crossed a boundary in my own self-care, and I woke up not feeling well. I had a migraine. I felt just like trash. And instead of choosing to power through as I would have in the past, I canceled the majority of my day and slept and recharged and did the things I need to do so that when I woke up on Thursday morning, I could get back to life and doing the things that I, continuing life as is, instead of having that ripple effect for days of I tried to operate not at the highest capacity.
Looking at your journey itself, I mean, it has been quite inspiring. Like for somebody to drop 200 pounds in any time frame is it's really inspiring. If you don't mind going back to what brought you to the point where to that weight? What was your mindset? What was there an incident that happened that took you to get there, or was it a chain of time, not paying attention to stuff?
It was more that chain. I was a person that's been overweight my entire life. You name the diet, I've done it. I was put on my first diet at 5 years old. And so I've done the yo-yo, gained and lost hundreds and hundreds of pounds in my life. And I had reached that point where dieting wasn't for me. Yes, I've lost an extreme amount of weight and have kept it off, but I didn't do it through intentional dieting. When I reached that point where I say I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, I was unhappy. I had the great life on the outside, but I was miserable on the inside, and I knew something had to change, but it wasn't let's go on another diet. It was let's change the habits in my life that are contributing to me living this miserable existence. It was physical habits, my nutrition, my movement, how I physically existed on this planet. It was my emotional health. It was my spiritual health. It was all of these things together, all of those habits that changed over time, that my body decided, okay, we're going to get rid of this weight because it's the ripple effect, all those habits. The first thing I did was just start drinking water. Then it was, okay, let's look at what are you eating. Instead of going to the drive-through, we're going to eat at home. Then it's changed the recipes. Then, okay, movement. Started walking. And, that first walk, it wasn't like crazy walks. It was to the end of the street and back, and I wanted to die. Then that walk around the street was around the neighborhood further and further, then it became running. Then it became the 5Ks, 10Ks, half marathons, marathons, and over into triathlon. It wasn't an overnight thing from I'm drinking water to I'm doing these crazy triathlons. This is over years that this happens.
And I think this is where personal trainers, guilty as charged, I think this is where we fail. We have a tendency of putting these kinds of ridiculous and unrealistic numbers behind targets. I don't like doing it personally. I have done it in the past. Not advertising as correct.
Well, it's getting to what somebody really wants. And like, I'll have someone come into my office or onto my Zoom screen and they'll tell me, I want to lose X number of pounds. That's great. And I'm not going to discount someone's desire to lose weight. But what does the scale actually accomplish? What does changing the number on the scale actually accomplish for somebody? Not a whole heck of a lot. So I do a lot more questioning than that. Why do you want to lose weight? And keep asking this question in a lot of different ways. Why? Why do you want to lose weight? I want to feel better. Okay, well, what does that look like? Why do you want to feel better? I want my clothes to fit better. I want to keep up with my kids or my grandkids. I want to be able to control some of these health outcomes like blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar. I want to be able to get up off the floor independently. There's so many things that people, if you keep asking this question in different ways, you really get to some vulnerable answers that talk about things like changing body composition, that deal with nutrition, that deal with balance, stability, strength. So many things that can be dealt with on a very specific, actionable level. And when we look at those things, when we break those down into those small, tiny pieces, work on those, get that transformation, the scale will take care of itself. You may or may not lose weight, but when you see that transformation, that is your result. That is what you wanted. And so we really hone in on that with people. We think we want the weight loss because honestly, that's what society conditions us to believe we need. That's what the doctor tells you. You go into the store with a sore throat, lose weight. That's the diagnosis if you're in a larger body. But honestly, it's the outcome. It's the health outcomes that we're changing is what we're really chasing.
Yeah, when I was training people for like weight loss and weight gain, because there's some guys that want, the muscles and this and that. I never put them on the scale. I never took any measurements. It was just a waste of my time, to be honest with you. It's, if you look at a pound of fat and a pound of muscle, it's completely different. Like the composition of fat is completely bigger than what it is for muscle. So you're not getting a true reading of what's really happening in the body. And you suffered from actually some other stuff too, like with PTSD and everything. At what point did you find that, enough was enough with the PTSD, and what changes did you make to help you cope with it? Because I know you can't really get out of suffering from PTSD. It's always there. It's always lingering. But what changes did you make?
Well, for one, I had to look at how I was using food and my relationship with food in dealing with my emotions, because that was unhealthy. That was my number one coping mechanism. And so, therapy is great. I love therapy. I was not using it to the best of my ability. And so really using that tool to pay attention to the coping mechanisms that I had been taught. I knew the coping mechanisms, but I wasn't utilizing them. And really having that support system around me, not just in therapy, but having the spaces and the people around me, my family, my friends, and being in a community. I live in a small community with amazing people that I can practice. If I'm having a bad day, like, I live in a wonderful place with amazing people that understand that, if I need some space, I can have some space. And just, acting like a grown-up about it. And in being honest and transparent instead of hiding when I'm struggling. That's something that was very hard for me to come around to, in that I didn't have to hide when things were bad, that it was okay to share with people that, I just need a little support right now, instead of, again, like I talked about before, that powering through, that, everything's okay. It's okay to share when things are not okay. And that was a hard lesson for me. And even today, that lesson continues to be something I have to practice, because I get into my mind like, I got this. I don't always. And we don't exist. We don't live in a vacuum. We need support. We need accountability. And it's making sure we're reaching out to the people and the places and the safe spaces that we have.
It's interesting. You said something very important there, hiding while struggling. Now, I know for a fact this is true. It's happening to me right now. This is how I know it's true. When you've isolated people completely from other people, it's hard for them to reintegrate themselves into society. I've been through it myself multiple times in my life. I'm going through it right now because of the measures that are back in Toronto. They're not helpful. How do you identify somebody who is suffering like that? And two, what are the steps that you would use to help them get out of that?
I think identifying is a little bit harder. And so I don't want to peg somebody specifically on that. But I think the way to help is that system of accountability. And that really comes in personal responsibility. I've chosen to surround myself with people and structures that not only love me, care for me, encourage me, provide me the resources that I need, but also when they see that I'm not keeping my commitments, that I am struggling a little bit, in love, they'll call me out on it, because I do need that kick in the pants sometimes. And it's not, that harsh shoulder tapping, like they're not hauling you out on the carpet, but they are going to pull you out of that place when they see you retreating away, because they're doing it for your best interest, because you've asked them to do that. in that accountability relationship, you've given them, I hate to say the power, but you've given them the power to do that.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's up to the person too. I mean, they have to, like you said before, push through and just, reintegrate.
Mhm.
You said something else that I want to touch up on, and this is actually really true for guys. If you ever hear a guy say, I don't know if you train men or guys, if whenever you hear them say, I'm okay or I'm fine, there's definitely something wrong with it.
Yeah. I am the champion of that phrase. I am never just fine.
Moving on, kind of moving on from that, what I really wanted to talk to you about is body image.
Oof.
And this is a big and touchy subject. And I really want to get into it because one, for myself, I've never been obese. The heaviest I've been is right now, and I personally don't like it. And I know what it feels like. I don't know what it feels like to be obese and everything. So the biggest thing that I've seen with myself and with a lot of my past clients is that people are very hard on themselves.
Mhm.
Why do you think people are so hard on themselves?
People are hard on themselves because we are great at judging ourselves, comparing ourselves to other people. And a lot of that comes from media, from the culture that we live in, from so many different places. And what happens is we get to this disconnect where we are not present. We are not with ourselves and seated in the present moment. And so we get this false image sometimes of even who we are and what we actually appear, in who we are. That sometimes it's we just look at the shell, and we are so much more than just the shell of who we are. Just the fact that we breathe on this earth, we are worthy. That's it. Case closed. I am. End of sentence. We are worthy. But I use myself as an example. I from dieting for so many years, I mean, like decades here. I'm not super young. I always had this picture in my mind. Now I'm at the smallest size that I have ever been. And I'm not a small person right now. So let's keep this in mind. But I'm smaller now than I was in middle school, pre-puberty. So there's something to wrap your mind around. After those years and years of dieting, you get this idea in your mind of what your body would look like at a particular size. You get that particular picture of that aesthetic of what your body would look like. My body looks nothing like that. And it is a mind screw. And I could choose to dwell on those things. Yes, there are a lot of things about my physical body that bother me. I have hanging skin. It's irreparable short of surgery. the skin of my arms is greater than the circumference of the muscles on my arms. I have hanging skin on my legs that I have to wear compression tights when I run so I'm not in pain. Like that's like the sum total of like my physical body, but I'm so much more than that. I am strong. I have endurance like I can't believe. And so it's letting go of that picture that we put in our mind and looking at all the things that we embody, because who we are as a complete person is so much more than what we believe we are to be.
Interesting, because throughout this entire time, we've been talking about everything except for working out, and eating right. Because you and I both know this has nothing to do. The easiest part is exercise and proper nutrition. That's the easiest part. The hardest part is the mind. Mm-hmm. And I have seen this time and time again. I had one client where she came to me and she dropped 100 pounds in a year. And she still saw herself as the big girl, mm-hmm. until she saw a picture of herself a year ago, the year previous. That's when things changed. Which kind of leads me to the next question is, when people see the change, when people go through the change, and I keep telling this with all my clients, you are not going to see the change. Mm-hmm. Your friends, your family members that haven't seen you in a year, 6 months, they will see it. So why is it so hard for people to see the change for themselves?
Because if we're doing it in a healthy way, meaning we're not doing a crazy crash diet or anything like that, if we're doing something and making that change in a healthy way, it's not happening overnight. It's that gradual change. And we see it in hindsight. When we look back, we see that massive change, but we don't see the little changes in the day-to-day. We don't see that, oh, last week I used a 5-pound dumbbell and today I picked up the 7-pound. And we don't think to acknowledge ourselves for the small change because it's so small. But those are huge things that happen. And then all of a sudden one day you wake up and you're like, oh, I'm that many sizes smaller, or, oh, I can do this that I was never able to do before.
Yeah, you go down one hole in your buckle on your belt and you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
two.
Yeah. Where's my punch? Because I have no belt holes left.
Yeah. I have my way of communicating this with new clients, especially when it comes to weight loss. It's like watching grass grow. You never see it until you actually need to cut the grass. And it's hard. It's very challenging for trainers to stay with, oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. It's very hard for customers to see that, and they don't. And how do you basically keep the fire burning under them, kind of thing, through, let's say, 2 months into working with you? And they're like, I don't see the change, but you're getting stronger in the gym floor. You're running faster. You're running further. You're actually running from walking. So how do you keep that fire burning for them?
I think it's like I talked about in that initial conversation and in building that relationship, having those multiple touch points of what do you want to accomplish? why are we doing what we're doing? Because if we're looking at something like, I want to be able to get up off the floor, well, then I'm going to break down for you. I'm the super nerd. So I'm going to explain to you all the mechanics of why we're working on balance, flexibility, stability, all the things. And then as we go through all these exercises, all these different things, I'm going to show you how you're hitting these different benchmarks, how you've increased from this angle to that angle, that you can lift this, you're doing this at a heavier weight, that you're able to do these things that you couldn't do before. In addition to, maybe you have dropped some inches, maybe you can walk a little bit further, you're carrying more grocery bags, you're willingly parking further away from the grocery door. What are some of the lifestyle habits as well that you're willingly engaging in as a ripple effect of what we're doing together?
That's good. Like setting the expectations at the beginning and explaining it. That I love doing that myself. Like, you're a nerd in this, I'm a nerd. I'm probably even more of a nerd because I go into like real post rehab stuff. It's like really nerdy.
Mhm.
And my clients are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, don't worry about it. The one thing that I have also found is people who stop and trying to find, and I hate using this word motivation, to get started again, because motivation is so finicky. It's like a lost child in the woods. It's like, ooh, look, and all of a sudden it's gone. And I keep telling people, the hardest thing about stopping is starting up again.
Mhm.
So how do you help people get started, or just get started? I usually, for people who get started, it's simple. They have a goal, they want to reach it, the motivation kicks in, and boom, they're with you. But then they don't, quote unquote, see the results like we talked about, and then they stop. How do you get them? I think we kind of covered it again, but how do you help them with that motivation when it fades and it's like they stop and they want to start again?
There needs to be an element of willingness and trust. And sometimes it's reminding someone of why they started. Generally, the people that I work with, they're here because they've tried it. They've tried the things, and they're done with the flashy and the whatever came up in the Facebook ads and things, and they're ready to commit and be here. And so there's some understanding that there's going to be days where they don't want to show up, but they're still here. And I think we all have those days. And so there is an element of compassion with that, because I have days where I don't want to show up and I'm still here. But those days pass, and it's an understanding that every day is not like that. And if we're starting to have a lot of days like that, then there is a problem. Then we do need to sit down and have a conversation about what is not working, because then that is a problem between the trainer and the client, that there might not be something working in the program, that maybe we do need to change something up, that maybe there is we need a little bit more variety, or we need something that is sparking interest. There are a lot of things that that can be done if you're having a hard time showing up. There's beyond motivation, there's a lot of things. Sometimes life is just hard.
Well, point. Yeah, life is hard, but what you're kind of explaining right there is just overtraining.
Mhm.
Because I've been there many, 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 many times. I mean, training for a triathlon, going to the gym, doing, my personal training stuff. You get tired. And you want to just stop. Do you think it's a good idea for people to take a break sometimes just from everything before they get back into it?
Taking a break, I don't advise changing it up, maybe lessening the load. Absolutely. But in terms of taking a break, unless there's something overarching that is there's that element of, then we break the habit of not showing up, not having that time carved out, not having that whole element of lifestyle in there. And it might be that we're showing up and doing something else. We're doing some nutrition coaching, we're doing some stretching, we're doing some different behavior things. It may not actually be exercise, but there's still that habit in showing up.
Yeah, I like that. Change the program, but keep the person engaged always. Could be meditation stuff, could be a yoga session. Yeah, I really like that. Now, there's this whole thing with negative thoughts that come into people's heads. We talked about this in quite extensively in the beginning with people setting up blocks for themselves. Do you think that a lot of those blocks come from past experiences?
Wholeheartedly. I think those blocks come from our past experiences, the experiences of others, things that we've seen are in our own limitations that we put in our way, that it might be hard, the fears that we have about our own ability.
What's one easy tip that you could give somebody right now to help them get over whatever, negative thought that might pop into their head? Like, I'm not good enough to go to the gym.
What's the worst that can happen?
Love it.
I want you to ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen if you show up? If you're afraid to show up at the gym, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if you walk in the door? You don't even have to get on the machine. What's the worst thing that's going to happen if you walk in the door?
I'll greet you with a smile.
Yeah.
I love it. It kind of reminds me of something one of my friends actually told me when I found out I was actually gluten intolerant, not lactose intolerant. He told me to try cutting out like pasta and bread. And like, coming from a Greek person, trying to cut out pasta, bread, and potatoes and rice, yeah, it's not gonna. It's a very hard thing for us to do. So I'm like, I can't do that. He's like, what do you have to lose? When he put it like that, I was like, wait a second. So it's the same thing like you just said, like, what's the worst that can happen? Right? So I love it. The big thing that we talk about here at the Fitness Oracle is exercise and how it improves mental health. It helps improve the way that you perceive yourself. What are your thoughts on how proper nutrition and proper movement, or let's focus on nutrition. First and foremost, and I know what the answer is going to be, but I want you to say it. Do you believe that changing your food to a more whole, raw way of living, the way that we're supposed to be living, rather than this processed way that we're living, do you think changing that can help with mental health? I know the answer, but I want you to answer.
For me, it's not so much what we're eating, but our relationship with food. And that is simply because for me, in coming from a background with an eating disorder, in not restricting food and really looking at the accessibility of food, I come more from the camp of intuitive eating and mindful eating, that there is a place for all foods. Now, that said, all foods don't serve us. Just like you said, you're gluten intolerant. So foods with gluten, not your friend. I'm allergic to tomatoes, not my friend. There are foods for each and every one of us that serve us well, and foods for each and every one of us that do not make us feel good, that do not help us, that don't help us perform at the top of our game. Now, every food on the planet has some type of caloric load, has different macronutrients, and that nutrient density is going to serve us in different ways. And, there's a lot of different things out there. Yes, there's those things we need for our bodies to run in the best way possible, but there's a lot of autonomy that comes in that as well.
From what I'm hearing is that you feel that there's a disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
There's a disconnect between the thing that fuels us.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that something simple as saying, I'm going to go a little bit Christian, saying a prayer, or giving thanks to the animal or the plant that's going to give us fuel for us to survive, do you think it could be just as simple as starting off as something like that?
Maybe. When we look at food, first of all, we have to make sure we're getting adequate food. To look at the experience of even having whole and raw food available, that's a very privileged place to be. And that's not something that a majority of us necessarily have. But that said, yes, our bodies can thrive with foods that serve us best. And it comes from experimenting with what we have available and really sitting with what we have and testing it out. I give the example of pasta. I don't eat pasta at night. It makes me feel horrible. The next day, I feel lethargic. It's just not a good thing. Give it to me for lunch, great. I have energy. I don't hit that afternoon slump. It's being mindful about the foods that we eat, when we're eating them, and how they affect us. Yes, there is nutritional benefit of making sure we're getting those servings of fruits and vegetables every day, that we aren't eating particular things to excess to affect our cholesterol and all those things. We know that. But again, that autonomy, we also don't owe anyone a particular health outcome. That's a very personal choice.
Let's get into movement. How does movement help improve somebody's mental health? And you've dealt with some pretty interesting stuff too with this. So.
Mm-hmm. I'm one of those people that I am still searching for these elusive endorphins that come from movement. Like, I'm going to be shocked the day they hit me, because I'm like, all right, I don't, whatever. But for me, I find peace in movement. Like, when I found that running was my thing, and I'm a girl that fake sick in gym class. So like, when I found that running was my thing, like, that changed my life, because there is so much peace and joy that I get from my body in motion. Like, there aren't enough words on the planet that I can describe that. It makes the world right. And there is that component that, yes, movement does help our mental health. Can it alter our mental health? That's up for debate. And yes, I think it can help us feel better. It can soothe us. It can change our mood. It can support us. But we also have to remember that a lot of mental health conditions, a lot of long-term things that people deal with are biochemical reactions in the body, that they are not going to disappear because of movement, because of nutrition, because of actions that we take, that they are going to be supported by medication, by therapies, by other supports, rather than the things that we can do. And there's no shame, there's no stigma in that. But yeah, movement is great. And it can be those additional supports that help us, that are almost that daily, I don't want to say prescription, but that daily thing that continues to give us that boost when we're feeling a little stuck.
I believe that the right movement can actually amplify somebody's mood, and the wrong movement can deteriorate it.
Yeah, totally. I'm a person that doesn't like strength training. And if I look at the calendar and strength training is on there and I'm having a bad day, that is going to not make my day any better. So I will probably be texting my coach saying, what can we do to change the calendar around? Because this is not going to make my day any better. It's being flexible. It's knowing what's going to help us and what's going to, not make things great.
I asked that question for a specific reason. Now, I come from a biomechanical background. So I know for myself, I have an issue with running. Mm-hmm. I can't run because I have a problem with my lower leg. Actually, technically, it's my foot. And it sends pain right up the chain, right up to my head, where I get nasty migraines. Now, I love running too. And I can't do it because I'm still trying to find my surroundings here in Florida. So That's why I asked that question, is because from a biomechanical standpoint, not all movements are good
Mhm.
for the person.
So then that is finding what are the other movements that bring us joy. What can we do that is comfortable, that doesn't exacerbate a condition, that does bring us relief, that does open us up, that stimulates that same sense of joy that running brings. And there might be some other activity.
I tried running on a treadmill. I
Oh
can't.
gosh, no.
That's just horrible. It's just horrible.
I will not run on a treadmill. I won't do it. I'm outside only.
We're not hamsters.
No.
I think the gyms have it backwards. They should attach the electrical to the treadmills. That way the client is providing power to the gym to keep the lights on. The one thing that I really like about what you do is the way that you look at people's goals. I don't think I've ever seen this before, because everybody's just so set. This is the goal. This is what I want to do. This is how I'm going to do it. But you have some more stuff, and we're going to get into that. But first, I want your thoughts on setting goals and why people actually give up on them.
People give up on their goals because we bite off too much too soon. It's that New Year's resolution effect where we overhaul life overnight, where everything changes. It's a brand new day and it doesn't fit our lifestyle, our schedules, our families, our kids, whatever it might be. It might not even fit your budget. So then it's something that it might stick around for a few days, a few weeks, maybe even a few months, but ultimately it starts to crumble because it's not sustainable. But when we introduce change from those very small steps, building on each other, that they fit onto the calendar, they fit within your family structure, they fit into your budget, they match all those characteristics. It's not really earth-shattering. It's not something that is a big upset to life, so that as we gradually build those things over time, yes, you see the ripple effect when you look back, but you're not seeing that huge interrupt to your day, to your time, to everything that's happening, so that it really is something that's sustainable. So you're like, oh, okay, this really is something that I can do, that, and you get that a sense of accomplishment from it, because you're like, oh, well, I never thought about it that way. I never really pictured that this was something that was possible.
And I love that. And this leads us to the next part, which is what the part that I really, really loved when I read it on the questionnaire. I was like, wow, I never thought about doing something like that with myself and with my clients. It's modification.
Mhm.
How do I tweak this to suit my current situation? That's what I took from it. And what do you mean by modification to your goal setting?
Well, there's a lot of different things that we can modify depending on the situation. Some things like people can get down on themselves because they're not at a point in the beginning where maybe physically they can do a 30-minute workout. They just don't have that fitness level where it's possible to exercise for 30 minutes. but they can for 5 minutes. So we can do 5 minutes of exercise for 6 days a week. That's 30 minutes. We discount the cumulative effect of exercise because I didn't do 30 minutes at once. For some reason, that doesn't count. But if I do all those 5 minutes, it comes up to 30 minutes. Now, yeah, there's a great, we know the benefits of, having our heart rate elevated for a particular amount of time and, all those wonderful things. But still, that bringing those little baby steps together, that is the starting point. There's also things like you might need to start doing some of your exercises in a seated position. You may not have the stamina or the ability to be standing. You might have a chronic illness where some days you are standing, some days you are seated, and you go back and forth. That's okay. Other times it might be that you're doing things in a park versus in your office versus at home, because that's life for you. It's looking at where you're at and making those modifications, making those adaptations, because that's what you have available, and making it work for you. You might not have a lot of space. What can you do with that?
Now the entire thing, we're not going to reiterate removing barriers because we kind of really exhausted that. But there is a point where these barriers will pop up. Do you find that it's important to help identify, say, you know what, that's a block that you showed up last time with?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's pointing it out in a way that is appropriate for the relationship that I've established with somebody. If we've only been working together for a few weeks, it might be in a way in conversation, helping them see it for themselves. If we've been working together for a while, I'm probably going to flat out say, this is, we've been through this before. Let's look at this. But it's really looking at, because we can see something from a perspective that someone else can't. In our minds, our barriers are insurmountable. They're real, they're absolutely valid, and nobody is going to tell me otherwise. I might see it completely different, and it is the smallest thing, and it's really easy to get around. I'm going to do my best not to discount it, because it's real and it's valid to you. I'm not going to discount it, but we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to try to help you see that we can move past it.
Awesome. We are coming up close to the end of the show, and these are the 8 questions that I ask all my guests, and I just want to get your perspective on these topics. With the increase in people suffering from depression from the past lockdowns and the pandemic, what would be the one thing that you could tell them to keep their hopes up?
Stay connected, whether it's virtually, in person, whatever you're able to do. Stay connected to some group, family, friends, whomever it is.
What's the one thing that you do on a daily basis that amplifies your ability to stay focused?
My morning practice. That not only includes my personal physical activity, but that is also my spiritual activity, my personal development, making sure that I am nourished for the morning and everything in between.
Awesome. If you could pick up the phone right now and call yourself at 20 years old, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, so many things. Um, invest in retirement independent of your employer.
I agree. Looking back, would you change anything?
Absolutely not. You know, I've learned a lot of lessons in my life, and I am a stubborn person, and I need to learn those lessons the hard way.
I love that answer. I love that answer. What scares you?
Everything. I'm serious. I am a fearful person, and I I I face a lot of fears on a daily basis.
Where do you see heart and soul fitness and wellness in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I hope that we've scaled a little bit, have a few new team members other than me and my assistant, and would love to just can see it grow and um, you know, serve more people.
How about you personally? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I would love to be hosting some retreats and larger events other than just guest speaking and the things that I do now, so that I'm able to get my message out to some larger audiences.
Great. Where can people find more about you?
I am all over social media on some iteration of Heart and Soul Fitness and Wellness, and soul is SOLE. My website is the best place, Heart and Soul, SOLE fit.com.
And we will post all the links that we received with the show notes, so everybody has easy access to your content and you and your programs.
Excellent.
Any final thoughts?
You know, this world is a big, scary place, but it's also an amazing place if you just get out there and do one new thing each and every day.
That's awesome. Stephanie, thank you so much for coming on the show. Your story it's an inspiration. It's an inspiration for a lot of people out there that think that they can't do something. And for you to be able to come out and talk and show and help other people in this way is just, it's great work. So I appreciate you for everything and coming on the show and, talking about some really hard topics. And I really appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a great time.
Going through hard times is just a test. What you need to know is that when you get out of whatever you're going through, you will be stronger than ever before, and you don't need to go through it alone. Always know that you are not alone. Stay tuned for more real people with amazing stories that are just like yours. Until then, to everyone out there listening, I wish you a good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you may be in this crazy world.